Hey, good morning, everybody.
Great morning and Happy New Year to everyone.
Mary Lee, do we have a?
I think we should. I can take a roll real quick.
Yeah, please.
All right. Everybody, please turn your cameras on so I can see you guys. All right. Mike Billings,
Here.
Rashad Bristow, Jill Hano,
Here.
Bambi Polizzola,
Here.
Coranda Corley,
It's Karonda and I'm present.
Nicole Flores,
Here.
Selena Gilliland,
Here.
Liz Gary. So we have a quorum, Mike.
Okay, thank you. Good morning, everybody. I'm glad everybody could make it for the meeting this morning. This really should probably be our final meeting. And I know on the agenda we have for future agenda items, I'm going to ask that if they are any, that they be deferred to the Self-Determination and Community Inclusion Committee. And I can have them added onto that agenda because we should be able to dissolve this committee as we've met our objectives. At least I believe we have, unless somebody can point us otherwise. So we've had our roll call, and I just want to go over the virtual meeting protocols real quick. And, you know, we're participating via Zoom. We're considered present when you just display on the live video feed your face and your first and last name. Please have your microphones muted unless you're called upon. Electronically raise your hand to request the chair recognize you to speak. Once recognized to speak, your microphone may be turned on, and after speaking, please return it to mute. Guests may participate via Zoom or observe via live on YouTube. All public meetings shall be recorded and may be available on the council's YouTube channel. Public comments submitted during the meeting will be submitted via Zoom by raising their hand to request a comment or posting comments in the chat box. Comments can be posted on the live stream of the YouTube channel for considerations. Any comments regarding a person's character will not be heard. And if the comment continues after being asked to stop by the chairperson, council staff may be asked to end the meeting. And I'd just like to remind everybody that we don't discuss any HIPAA issues on the live feed. We shouldn't be discussing anybody's abilities or disabilities. Other than that, we can move on to our agenda and the approval of the November meeting summary. I'm sorry, Jill, I see you have your hand raised.
I just wanted to clear the air, but the council bought me this echo pin that is a recording device, and I just wanted everyone to know and feel comfortable that my assistive technology does record the highlights of the meeting, but any fluff I will be turning it off of record, and I just wanted to have that as a full disclosure
Okay. Thank you, Jill.
for y'all. Okay, thank you, Mike.
Yes, ma'am. So has everyone had an opportunity to look at the meeting summary for the November 19th meeting? Give everybody a minute and then see if we have any comments. Do we have any suggested changes to the meeting summary? And if not, can we get a motion for approval, please?
I'll make a motion.
Thank you, Bambi. We have a motion from Bambi to approve the November 19th meeting summary. Do we have a second?
I second.
Thank you, Nicole. Do we have any objections? Any abstentions? Any public comment? Hearing none, the motion carries. Now, Mary Lee is going to provide us an update on the contracts, next two items.
I will. I'm so sorry. I missed who the second was.
That was Nicole Flores.
Okay, good morning, everyone. I'm happy to be meeting with you all this morning. I wanted to give you guys an update on the contract between the council and Families Helping Families at the Crossroads, who holds their own contract with the PIP coordinator for the implementation of PIP. So at our last meeting, which was in November 19th, we met and we made, or you guys made, some motions for the executive committee to consider. One of those motions was regarding the contract, and I'm going to share my screen just so y'all can see that, all the motions in one place. Does everybody see my screen? I can't see what y'all see. Okay, so you'll see the third motion. The PIP ad hoc committee recommends the executive committee act as expeditiously as possible in signing a contract with Families Helping Families at the Crossroads for PIP, and offers this motion to the executive committee for its consideration. So then the executive committee met December 2nd, and a contract was signed between the council and Families Helping Families at the Crossroads for PIP. It was signed in December. However, it was backdated to October 1st. So a contract has been signed. We have been getting invoices, and I'm not sure if Jim wants to do the next item, which is an update on his contract, the one with FHF at the Crossroads and the PIP coordinator.
Yes, we have a contract and I have signed it and it will be in her hands today.
Are there any questions or comments from you on that? Mike, I think Ms. Corley has her hand up.
I'm sorry, I had to unmute myself. Karanda, you had the floor.
Thank you. I just want to clarify that, and this is a two-part, it might be a multi-part question, but did you say, Ms. Andrews, that this contract was only backdated to October?
Yeah, I said the contract was backdated to October 1st, 2020.
Okay, and Mr. Sprinkle, to my understanding, was Ms. Thomas still employed, just temporarily, still kind of like doing work as the coordinator since the
Sure was.
pandemic started in March?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so I think that it would be extremely prudent of us to look at the labor laws and consider labor laws, and consider equal employment opportunities and other federal laws that applies to situations like this, and that we actually recommend or send over something towards the executive committee to actually consider paying Ms. Thomas all the way back to the very first day of the pandemic, and reimbursing the families, helping families at the crossroads, any expenditures that they had to do in that capacity. Because back to October 1st is not long enough if she been working, and we know that the state went into a lockdown in March.
Mike, can I address that?
Yes, Mary Lee, go ahead.
So Ms. Corley, I appreciate your concern. She has been paid, everybody's been paid for that entire time. Our contracts run on the federal fiscal year. So our contract with FHF at the Crossroads ended September 30th, 2020. Thus, FHF at the Crossroads contract with the PIP coordinator ended also September 30th, 2020. October 1, 2020 is the next federal fiscal year, and that's when our next contract would have started. It only didn't get, a new contract was just not made, which is what this committee addressed. So there's no concern and there's no conflict with labor laws.
In other words,
Go ahead, Jim.
she has been paid.
Thank y'all for clearing that up.
Permission to speak, Mr. Billings?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, that's what I just wanted to make sure of, because I know in our previous meetings, it was stated that Ms. Thomas was only paid like $500 twice. But it was never stated that it was an ongoing payment from March until October 1st. So thank you for clarifying that, because no one should ever work for free. That's a violation of labor law. And I just wanted to make sure that we're not asking Ms. Thomas to do something that any of us would not be willing to do ourselves, and that is work for free.
No, ma'am.
Okay, Mary Lee, did you have anything else? You're muted.
Sorry, if there's any more questions, I can answer those. Or if not, we can go to agenda item number 4.
Karanda Corley has her hand raised.
Go ahead, Karanda.
Thank you. I have just another question. Do we, I noticed that we said that the contract is only for 1 fiscal year. Do we have anything in place to prevent this situation from occurring again, considering that the pandemic will not be over by the time the fiscal year ends next year?
So I'm not sure I understand specifically your question. We have a contract and it's going to run October 1, 2020 to September 30th, 2021. That's when all of our contracts end. And then every year, if we have funding, we'll fund those initiatives again and find a contractor, and the contract will find the subcontractor. Historically, the contractor is Families Helping Families at the Crossroads. So I don't know if you can say today how it's going to play out next federal fiscal year.
Permission to elaborate, Mr. Billings?
Sure.
Okay, I'm inquiring on if we have any blanket policy in place to prevent a situation like this occurring. We just heard from Mr. Sprinkles that the contract was just recently signed. Ms. Thomas, the pandemic lockdown occurred in March. So we had a lapse in the contract from September until whatever date Mr. Sprinkle was finally able to sign that contract, but we know it wasn't December 1st. So in the event that we have another situation like this, because considering that the pandemic is not over with and will not be next year by October 1st, 2022, do we have any type of procedure policy in place to prevent that situation or that lapse in a contract? And if not, can we do a motion to have one put in place?
So there's no procedure in place that I'm aware of that forces the council to sign a contract with a contractor or the contractor to sign a contract with a subcontractor. I'm not sure if that answers your question. You keep saying like something like this happening again, and I guess I don't know what that means.
Jim, do you care to elaborate?
Yeah, historically for years now, this contract is adjusted, renewed every year about the same time. Happened with the council, what the council decide, maybe they want to make a change. So it starts fresh every year and has for as many years as it's been in existence.
Thank you, Jim. I'm not sure of state contract law, but I know on federal contract, in our situation, we can't issue contracts in advance. They have to, it's usually every year a new proposal for the contract. So, Karanda, I hope that answered your question.
You have a public statement from Ashley McReynolds regarding this discussion.
Can you read that?
Sure. Ashley McReynolds says, I thought the delay was from the DOA. It's my understanding that almost all contracts were late coming out of DOA.
So, no, that was not the delay. The delay was the interim executive director wasn't comfortable signing a contract without the budget portion of that contract. And a budget portion of that contract, she did not feel could be completed thoroughly until it was decided what to do with the 2020 class that only completed part of partners and how to possibly do the 2021 class. So that was the goal of this ad hoc committee, was to make a recommendation on that to the executive committee so that once she saw that, she would be more comfortable signing a contract, which is what happened.
Okay, thank you. Selena, I saw your hand up earlier. Do you still have a comment?
Yes, thank you. I saw the agenda shows that we're going to go over the virtual accommodations for self-advocates for the 2020 class, but I wondered, are we going to cover the virtual format and scheduling for the class in today's meeting? Are we going to kind of know what accommodations are going to be made for everyone?
Okay,
So-
thank you for that.
You go ahead, Mike.
Really?
Yes. Oh, yes, sir. So
Go ahead.
for the agenda item number 4, 2020 PIP self-advocates virtual accommodations was put on the agenda because it was raised as a concern, if my memory serves me right, by Ms. Corley at one of our previous meetings. It's not to discuss the specifics of how to implement a virtual session. That would, as I understand it, would fall more under, that would be like the minutia of how to run the program, which
Right.
wouldn't be on this, it wouldn't be on an agenda or for a committee to decide.
Yeah, it's not within the scope of this committee. So let's move on to the next item, and maybe Adrian can help bring us up to speed. Adrian, you have the floor.
Yes, this will be easy. Good morning and Happy New Year to everyone. I just wanted to reassure everyone I'm using the same information that I had as I was to share in the November meeting. Just to confirm and let all those that were concerned know that we're going to follow I will encourage to follow the same guidelines and principles that are used as I or others have participated in coordinating IEP and 504 plans. With that being said, we're going to handle the information in a sensitive and confidential manner. So that information that Mary Lee and I have collected through the application that we have through the application process and through all of the information that has been submitted by each individual participant, we're going to deal with that specifically with that participant. We're also going to consider, I hope, and I think Mary Lee and I agree as we discussed prior, that under consideration also will be the concerns and requests of parents in which the disability within their family unit accommodations to be considered. And I know that was one thing that was a concern of Ms. Salita Gilliland of at the last meeting. So there are 3 main areas that and this information is not the wheel being reinvented. This information can be found online at any professional organization that assists and put out white papers or research the valid research information about accommodation. One that I'm not promoting a website or anything, but one that I've used in the school system has been understood.org. And it shows to look at accommodations in 3 main areas. And that's accommodations that change the way information is presented. So we know that the way we present information in person now has to be converted and put into a form to be presented virtually. Accommodations that change the way assignments are completed, and accommodations that help with scheduling, timing, and organization. And I know that's where Ms. Gilliland was really concerned at, and other parents may be concerned. And I see some people writing, so if you want me to repeat those 3 areas, I'm okay with it. I said, once again, those are accommodations that change the way information is presented, accommodations that change the way assignments are completed, and accommodations that can help with scheduling, timing, and organization. So I know that when we send out information prior to the year beginning, we have a schedule of dates and times that we will meet in person at the identified meeting place. And there are 2 dates usually on that must be met, that you cannot miss. And so those things will be merged into that third section about accommodations that can help with scheduling, timing, and organization. And once again, I will encourage in our future discussions as we get ready to meet the needs of the 2020 class and therefore on, that we use those same guidelines and principles that we use in coordinating IEPs and 504 plans, that we do it in the strictest, sensitive, and confidential manner, just as we've been doing the in-person accommodations. Mary Lee have a hand up?
Yes, Mary Lee, go ahead.
Hey, Adrian, I just wanted to make sure I understood you correctly as I type these notes. You're saying that you plan to implement accommodations in those 3 areas?
Those are just the 3 areas that the accommodations usually fall in. So if someone needs, roughly, I'm just thinking of a regular student IEP. If someone needs extended time in taking a test, then that accommodation falls under accommodations that can help with scheduling, timing, and organization. So whatever strategy we use to meet the needs of our participants usually will fall under those 3 general areas.
Thank you.
Yes, Selena, go ahead.
How will those accommodations be determined and implemented? Will it be survey, or how will you get the needs from everyone?
Well, I should, Chair, may I go on and answer her? Mr. Bennett?
Yes, ma'am, go ahead.
Okay. The first thing we will do is go back and review all of the information that was, and that's actually being done now. So I've actually been doing it as part of my responsibilities. So basically what I do is take the application, that initial survey. I don't know if you remember when you filled out the application, there was information regarding either your child's disability. There's also an initial survey. There are some specific questions that ask about any accommodations that you may need, and just just an example, as if someone had said that they needed their information in large print. So that information has already been received, as well as we look at, or I've looked at, and we will continue to look at the feedback that is given all through the sessions. So even from the evaluations, even from the emails or the text messages that I have received personally from individual participants, I keep documentation on that, and that is also being looked into consideration. So then from there, I would say step 2, or the next step after that information has been reviewed, then each participant, I will reach out to each one. And that can happen by phone, by email. You know the different ways that I've communicated with you, and ask you to respond back to me if you have any additional concerns, or if you want to discuss what you have said in your application that we've done in person. And if there's anything that extend beyond those things that I know will happen. So for example, we know let's use Zoom for example. With the Zoom format, if we're meeting on Zoom, and if you are requesting or in need of an accommodation that goes beyond my strategies or resources, then my third step in that process will go to Mary Lee and Mr. Sprinkle, and perhaps the interim director. And that's where we determine, okay, I present the information on your behalf. This is what we have in the application. This is what we have discussed. This is what we're doing, but this is how it's affecting this person's ability to be successful in this program. And these are the recommendations that we might want to consider or look at. And that happens completely on an individual basis. But those are the general 3 steps that I will take to meet all, whether it's virtual or in person.
So if I'm understanding, you're going to be going to each participant individually and making sure of what accommodations are going to be needed. There won't be a reassessment of everyone's technology needs and situation, because things may have changed for people in the last year.
That would happen in your step 2.
Okay.
So I know I already have step 1, and I may have I may have 3 things, and I may say, if I, without using you for an example, but not using you as a breaking any confidentiality. I may say, hey, Selena, I see 1, 2, and 3 that you placed on your accommodations on your application. And we have been meeting those things in person. Things have changed. We're now on virtual. Do you have any other concerns? Let's talk about it. And that's what happens in step 2. And so then as I say, if you have any changes or anything that would prevent you, or you think you need any assistive technology, I noticed Ms. Hano, congratulations on your new assistive device. So things like that, that's at that point that we can look at those things, because it may not be that the council may be able to partner you with a resource that may benefit you in other areas. And that's what we want to, make sure that all resources, not just for the success of the partners program, but for the success of your family and your desires and needs, so that you can be successful in your plight as being a successful policymaker. So that's the general concern. And so if it means that you didn't know about Lacan and they can help you with technology devices, then that's what we want to make sure, that you are provided those resources, or at least are aware of those resources, so that you can be successful in those areas. And like I said, that actually may be in the step 3 part, where I just say, hey, Mary Lee, hey, Jim, hey, Courtney, Miss Ryland, Miss, formality. Miss Gillian had this concern, and I'm suggesting that we recommend her to, or kind of recommend her to partner with Lacan and get these devices, because they may help her be more successful in the program.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. That concludes my virtual accommodation synopsis, and the examples or the questions that help to clarify any concerns anyone may have had.
Thank you, Adrian. Any other questions for Adrian? Seeing none, let's move on to Mary Lee and item number 6.
Hannah or Brenton, does anybody have their hands up or any chats?
Miss Karonda Corley has her hand raised.
Okay.
Go ahead, Karonda. sorry.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chairman. Ms. Thomas, will there be any standard practice? Because I noticed that Ms. Gillian's question was about how it would be implemented, but will there be a standard norm that you would do besides the individual things that are needed, such as like today, our meeting is live streamed, but we have as a standard practice, a standard accommodation, we have closed captioning provided. So just in case some people may not feel as comfortable as, with disclosing their actual needs, that we do have some type of accommodations already available, as well as another possible accommodation is sending over the materials to everyone in large print, with minimum background emblems and stuff in behind the text, so that it's easier for them to read. But I'm just wondering if that was a thought or a consideration, just having some standard accommodations, just to make sure that we are being as inclusive as possible.
Mr. Chair, may I answer?
Sure, go ahead.
Yes, Ms. Curley, that is correct. Let me re-emphasize. The standard is the steps that I just stated, and that happens in person or virtual, which we are moving into. So regardless of, let me not say regardless. If the partner session is in person or the partner session is virtual, I, as an advocate and as a parent and as an educator, a social worker, and all of those other little titles and credentials that I might bear, through my ethics and principles, still will go through the same process of looking at what is requested. Now, I might add saying that I can speak to the practice of what the court, as long as I am the coordinator, that this is the practice. What I have the ability to also do is to know that, or to have the knowledge and the initiative to undertake or to carry out, that even if a person does not disclose how their disability specifically affects them, I along with others have the ability to look at the disability and have the knowledge of what possible accommodations that person may need without being disclosed immediately. My social work background allows me to start where that person is, and they may not be comfortable disclosing to me at that time what they need. But that's my job, and that's my responsibility to be a coordinator that allows a person to feel comfortable disclosing so that they can be successful in what they need. If I can't do that, then I'm not doing the responsibility. I'm not carrying out those responsibilities well. And I need to either brush up my skills or get some assistance. So it's kind of like you're asking the question, but that is the standard. And I know you want that clarity. That is the clarity, that no matter what, I don't care. I mean, it could be from ALS to Parkinson's to spina bifida. I have my resources, my books, my websites that I'm going to look at what the possible accommodations from every, not just in regards to partners, but in every daily aspect of life, what accommodations that person may need. And I'm hoping that's why I was selected as the coordinator, because that's where my background and expertise is, in meeting the vocational needs of people with disabilities. And that's part of what I pledged the oath as I license and credential yearly to do.
Thank you so much, Ms. Thomas. I just wanted you to clarify it so that the audience would actually be able to know, because I don't think that they're always fully aware of everything that I may be aware of, or that some of the other people on the council may be aware of, considering your background and your areas of expertise. So I just wanted it to be stated for the record so that everyone else would know just how passionate you are and why you're the perfect person for this position.
Duly noted.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Billings.
Thank you. Mary Lee, you have the floor.
Thank you, Adrian. So I'm going to move on to agenda item 6, ITAC disparities. Just to refresh the committee, at the committee's second meeting, which was in November, Ms. Corley wanted to incorporate targeted disparities according to ITAC. She mentioned ITAC's disparities and requested an agenda item to look at previous partners' years to see how to move forward with the 2021-2022 class, looking specifically at ITAC disparities. There's a bit of discussion on what is an ITAC disparity. I did reach out to NACDD, the National Association of Councils on Developmental Disabilities, and I spoke directly with their ITAC technical assistance person. I believe I've linked her response, but essentially I asked her if ITAC has a list of disparities that they have adopted for DD councils to respond to. There is a lot of good information on ITAC's website. Just as a side note, if someone was interested in this, they have a disparities resource guide posted from Georgetown and a resource guide for councils and others to use to respond to disparities. But they do not have a list of disparities for DD councils to address, like that they have adopted. I think it might have been possible that we were talking about the targeted disparity element that's in each council's 5-year plan. ITAC does collect targeted disparity statements from councils for their 5-year plans. So I went ahead and I took it a little bit further and I looked up that. So for Louisiana, for our 5-year plan, now at the time that this information was taken, the 5-year plan was the 2017 to 2021 5-year state plan. And Louisiana's targeted disparity was individuals with developmental disabilities who live in North Louisiana, which tends to have a higher number of underserved and unserved people, is more rural, has more poverty, has lower employment in the general population, and has less access to quality employment support providers. So I'm continuing to move forward. I'm just laying the groundwork for you guys. We have a new 5-year plan. So we have a state 5-year plan for federal fiscal years 2022 to 2026. That went out for comment and the due date on that has passed. But the council adopted it in October of 2020. It went out for comment. Public comment saw it on the council's 5-year plan with a due date of December 10th. And I'm not sure if it's on the agenda for the January meeting or not. So that's the background on ITAC disparities. I'm not sure if Adrian has the data from the PIP alumni that was requested or that we wanted to talk about, which was again to look at previous years to see how to move forward with PIP classes, looking specifically at ITAC disparities. So I just wanted to share that information with you guys, as that was kind of an assignment for me. And I know that was a lot of information.
Yes, it was good information. Thank you, Mary Lee. Do we have any other comments? Karanda?
Thank you. First, I wanted to see if Miss Thomas had something to say because she was muted, and I don't know if she was actually getting ready to say something or wanted to say something before I did.
Go ahead, Adrian, you're muted.
Am I, can you hear me now?
Yes.
I'm going back and forth. I do want to say that, yeah, it is a lot of information. I am still in that process because I'm having to reach out to Liz and Mary Lee because to gather that information. It's a lot for precise analysis and to actually capture a lot of historical data that I mean, we're talking about 400 people, and the ITAC disparities are very sensitive. So some of those we won't, like, we can't just pick up the phone and say, hey, what's your sexual gender? You know, there are some disparities that are very sensitive. And unless that information is just there or voluntarily disclosed, we can't just pick up the phone and start calling for certain information. So I'm going to continue to synthesize or examine that information and put it with in parallel to what Mary Lee is saying about the ITAC disparities, and especially those that are closely related with what is identified in the 5-year plan. So just as if the last 5-year plan wanted to look at the increase of participants in North Louisiana, I'm especially going to be looking at, well, did we increase our goal or increase in reaching out to those participants that are in North Louisiana, or if we wanted to increase our self-advocates, how are our numbers going up and down for self-advocates? So Mr. Billings, if I might say, I commend Ms. Corley for pointing out that we should look at the ITAC disparities, and I think moving forward, and I think Mary Lee and I agree as she started her steps in it, and I've started my steps in it, that we'll use the information that we have and that is being provided as continued guidelines, because it has been a part of the selection process. It may not be it's not using the words of ITAC, but it's using the words of partners. So if you go, and this is information that is online, you can go on the partners, the Minnesota's website, and see the selection process for participants and partners in policymaking that our council strongly attempts to align our program with that program, because that's what our charge is to do, to be aligned with what other states are doing when it comes to the selection process. And so I just want to say we're going to use that, especially for a basis of what we would consider improvement, if that is what we're charged to do.
Thank you, Adrian. Liz, you had your hand up.
Thank you, Mike. I want to reiterate, as far as it goes, when it comes down to making sure the disparities are touched on, that it's really, really, really important for a recruiting effort. It's a recruiting issue more than anything. It's a marketing issue and getting the people out there to actually apply. year after year. The first year I did it, it was like 65 applications, which was the largest year ever in applications. After that, it's always been like 30, 32. You know, we have had a couple 40, 45, but it's definitely a recruiting effort in making sure that we are tapping into every area of every part of the state that can share that information, get that information out, make sure people understand what it is, that it's a free session for training them on becoming leaders. I think that is the most critical thing of all, is getting the information out to the people so that you can get the applications in. Because once the applications were in, the first thing we did in the 11 years that I did it was look at all the ones that were outliers and made sure that they qualified. If they qualified and there was no other issue, they were accepted. So we would start with, you know, the ones in the, if you had 40 applications and there were 15 from region 2, those sat until, and region 9, those sat until we made sure that every other region was touched. We made sure that if somebody was in a region, unless they completely did not qualify because they didn't have a disability or their child didn't have a disability, that they were accepted if they were in any of the disparity issues. We made sure of that, but it's definitely a training and recruiting issue. But I wanted to share that because I think that's important for everybody to be able to be out there pursuing that, and pushing partners so that people are applying. In reference to what you're saying, Adrian, I'm more than happy to help in any way. I can give you pretty much the last 11 years. I can tell you who, what, when, where, those people. So it's kind of up here. You'd have to ask me names and I'd have to go back to the visual, but it's definitely something I can help you to be able to draw down and see where they fell and that kind of stuff to get the data that's being requested. But other than that, I just felt like it was very important to say that because it always has been a recruiting effort with a lot of things when it came to the world of disabilities, because we got to make sure too that those ones out there who are unsure, for instance, you got a lot of self-advocates that don't know how they're going to get there, so they don't even apply. And then if they're living in group homes or they're living in other places where these you know, caregivers are not pushing it, then they're not going to do anything and they're not even going to let them apply. We had a lot where I've talked to the caregivers to make sure that they were aware that we'd get them a bus, we'd give them an Uber, we'd do everything we can to get them there. And that was an expense we absorbed to ensure that we got the self-advocates there. But I just want to challenge everybody that, you know, obviously this year is going to be a different year where anyone will have the capabilities of participating and learning. But when we go into, you know, mid-June, mid-July, if we're looking better with COVID, then we're pushing for next year. All of us need to be able to take a huge role in recruitment throughout the entire state of Louisiana. Thanks, Mike.
Thank you, Liz. Those were very good points on recruitment. And I've been on the selection committee, and you really can't select somebody if you don't have an applicant. So, you know, we definitely got to target those select fields. Jill, you have your hand up. We can't hear you, Jill.
Okay, Marilyn, when did you say the deadline for our public comment was? December 10th?
Yes, so the state 5-year plan for federal fiscal years 2022 through 2026, at the October council meeting, the council adopted it. And then after it was adopted, it had to be sent out for public comment. So it was sent out for public comment via LADDC News.
Right.
And the due date, let's see, it was sent out for public comment October 26, 2020. And the due date for comments was December 10th, 2020.
Okay.
So that has passed.
Did we get any public comment?
That's a great question. The comments were sent to Ms. Courtney Ryland. She does the planning for the council, and haven't heard from her what the comments were. I think we asked briefly in staff meeting, but I'm not sure if she shared that. I know when she does have it compiled, if there were any comments, I'm sure she has a mechanism of sharing it. It might even be on the January council meeting agenda. I haven't looked at it in detail yet, but I haven't heard anything yet.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Karonda, you have your hand up. You have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Billings. And I really and truly appreciate everyone's answers. Ms. Andrews, I did not hear, and I just want to clarify before I go into my next question and statement, but you did not say that there was anything in our 5-year plan that was adopted as it relates to inequities and disparities for people that are diverse and inclusive with partners in policymaking for our 5-year plan, correct?
I'm not sure if I said what you're asking. So I talked about 2 5-year plans. Our old 5-year plan, you have to forgive me as I flip through all my little notes I have. Our last 5-year plan was 2017 to 2021. And Louisiana adopted targeted disparities for those 5 years in that 5-year plan. Just to summarize, it was people with developmental disabilities in North Louisiana, because this area has a higher number of underserved or unserved, is rural, has more poverty, has lower employment, and has less access to quality employment support providers. So that was the last 5-year plan. And then the new 5-year plan as I reviewed it, under goal 2, community and living supports, the only thing I saw was objective 2.3, which said targeted disparity, disadvantaged population. And so that's for the current 5-year plan. Does that give you more information to elaborate on your question, or does that answer your question?
That answered my question, and I wanted to make the point, and I thank you so much because I really appreciated all the time and energy that you put into seeking the information, because the information was very, very much, I did read it, and I took a great pleasure and delight in it, and it actually hurt me to my heart to notice that we are not reaching our populations as needed so that we can be more diverse and inclusive. It's even represented on this council today, on this ad hoc committee today as we sit here. We can look at how many minorities are present, how many self-advocates are present, just from looking at this ad hoc committee. If we look at the DD Council membership, it's reflected on there who's a self-advocate. It's also, when you attend the meetings, you can see who's a diverse, who's a minority. So that representation matters. And I'm just wondering if it has ever been considered, especially since our governor has created a task force that addresses inequities and disparities. Have we looked at that group as an actual group that we can use as a tool to actually help us with reaching out to these populations that are unserved, underserved as it relates to diversity and inclusion? Also, are we utilizing our governor's office of disabilities affairs? They send out a newsletter faithfully. They will send out surveys. They will send out anything to try to bring about inclusiveness and diversity. Are we utilizing the tools that we really have that are at the forefront? We have other organizations such as the NAACP, the Afro-Latinos, the Latina community, the Vietnamese, the Arabics, that actually have communities that represent their those that are developmental disabled, and yet we do not have that population ever represented. Deaf and blind, we have a school for that. yet we don't have those populations represented. So I just, and they're not the majority of them, those populations that I'm speaking of, are not members of the Partners in Policymaking alumni. So I when I speak about that, I speak about that being a member of this diverse population that is not represented. But I also take to heart what Ms. Lillian Dejean stated on a meeting several times over about our need for more self-advocates. And she did great work on presenting the actual percentage of self-advocates that are actually represented, whether it's in partners, on the council, etc. And I just wanted to know how much are we using these different entities to actually bring them about? And do we even have that representation on the selection committee for the Partners in Policymaking class? I mean, I think that may be also another hindrance. If we don't have those populations represented in the selection process, then are we really and truly being true to ourselves to actually put forth a real great effort?
Thank you, Ms. Quaranda, for sharing those comments. So the first thing you mentioned that I have down is you were questioning if the council has looked at targeted disparities as a group to help us reach out to underserved and unserved populations as it relates to disability and inclusion. So that's kind of broader than this ad hoc committee, which was really to decide what to do with partners, the partners class that couldn't finish. So that's the first thing. The second thing is I think that we are on a good track to address that. There was an ad hoc committee formed. I can't remember if you were there, or I feel like you might have even made the motion, but my memory could be wrong. The council recently created like a disparity ad hoc committee. So that would be a good place for you to share this kind of input and for that kind of work to be done. The next thing he said is, are we utilizing the Governor's Office of Disability Affairs and other groups in reaching those who are developmentally disabled? I mean, we work closely with GOTA. Bambi is here now. She is the executive director of GOTA. She's been on the selection committee. I don't know if she might want to answer that question better. The next thing he said was, many members of disability groups are not members of Partners in Policymaking. And you, again, took to heart Ms. Deja's presentation on our need for more self-advocates. So I'm gonna lean back on what Ms. Gary shared, and Mr. Billings kind of doubled down on that a little bit. I think we've identified that that's a concern, and the solution is in recruiting, from what I hear them saying. I was on the last Partners in Policymaking selection committee. It was made up of people that had graduated from Partners. That's, I believe, a requirement to be on that selection committee. So you can't, I'm not sure if it's just our standard or if it's actually like a rule somewhere with the state that started Partners, but to be on the selection committee, you have to have graduated from Partners. You can't just put any person on there just because they have a disability. But if you wanted people on that committee that had a disability, which I think would be a great idea, they would have had to graduate from Partners. So it's like circular, and you kind of circle back to how to get those people in Partners. And again, I believe, and I'm relying on the information of Ms. Gary, she was the coordinator for a very long time, and the selection process that I set in on, it's a recruiting issue. You can only pick who applied. I can't, if we're sitting there with 100 applications and 0 applications are from someone who is deaf, you can't put someone who is deaf or hard of hearing in PIP. They're not there to select. So I think we've clearly identified that that's a concern. And I believe we've identified the solution is recruitment. I can second what Ms. Gary said, which is I was there with a huge multiple boards and markers, and Mike can probably attest to this if he remembers. We broke it out by region, by disability, by race, by all the things that the state that started partners said, this is what you should look at when you select. And the ones, if a region had one applicant, we picked them. That was the first person that the committee, I'm saying it was the committee that picked. And there's a region with 10 applications. That one we looked at last to make sure you had people from different areas. If there were 30 applicants with autism spectrum and one with some other disability, we went with that disability first. So I hope that is some good information that is heartening to you in some way. Moving forward with the concerns regarding disparities, targeted disparities, things like that, I believe that would be most appropriate to be on the committee, the ad hoc committee that was created for that.
Agreed. That topic is at the forefront of pretty much everything the council's working on right now. But as far as this ad hoc committee, it is really outside of our scope of what this committee was formed for. But it is an important issue, and I appreciate the discussion. Jill, you had your hand up, but I can barely see the top of your head. There you go.
I think I forgot to take it down from before.
Okay,
Sorry.
no worries. Any other comments?
Mike, they're telling me that there's some comments in the chat.
Can someone read those out for us? Sorry.
Ms. Karanda Corley has a question. She says, have the disparities ad hoc been chosen as well as a scheduled meeting date? If they have not made selections, I would love to be on that task force. She also asked, how can one apply to be in the selection committee for partners?
Mike, do you want me to take that?
Yes, please.
So the disparities ad hoc committee, I'm not sure what's happening with it. I'm not sure what council staff is in charge of it, or if there's even been a chair selected. I do know, I want to say it came about around the time of Elaine's presentation. I do also know at the same time, the council's chair suspended all ad hoc committees that weren't essential. This one was deemed essential, which is why we're still meeting. So to answer that question, I would recommend you email our interim executive director, Courtney Ryland. And I think everybody has her email. I can put it in here, but she's in charge. So she will kind of divvy that up, and she'll work with the council chair to assign a chair and things like that. Your second question was, how can one apply to be on the selection committee for PIP? So historically, the council chair has looked at the council members and found out which ones were partners graduates, and then selected out of those people to be on the selection committee for PIP. So if you're interested in that, I would recommend you email the council chair. And you have to forgive me, Ms. Coranda, I'm not sure, did you graduate from Partners in Policymaking? You did, okay. So that's a check. You're not a council member, so I'm not sure if they would allow you to be on it, but I know the things are changing. For example, in this committee, there's half the committee is non-council members. So that would be the information I would give you and I would reach out to our council chair on that question, that for the next time there is a selection committee.
Thank you, Mary Lee. Do we have any other comments? I don't see anything else. The item number 7 is the dissolution of the committee or future items. And really, we've met the goal of the committee. So I don't see any future items that can't be addressed by either the Self-Determination and Community Inclusion Committee or the council itself if they come forward at a later time. So I think it would be, I'd like to formally dissolve the committee. So if we could get a motion to do that. Liz, we can't hear you. I see your hands up.
I just have a question before we formally dissolve, if that's okay, Michael.
Yes, ma'am. Yes.
Mary Lee, can we get any feedback on if the other 2 motions that we had talked about were approved by the executive committee based on moving forward with the virtual, and the second motion, which was to do 2021 sessions open to the public?
Yes, so I know we talked about that earlier this morning, and I'm just gonna share my screen so everybody can see it. Y'all, I'm so bad at sharing a screen, it's embarrassing. Give me a second.
So I find the motions, I just didn't know if those 3 were approved.
Right, I was just gonna put them up.
Okay.
In case somebody else didn't have them pulled up. And then I was gonna talk about it.
Great, thank you.
Okay. Can everybody see that? Okay, so this is just a refresher. These are the motions that this committee that you guys are in made at our last meeting. It was brought to the executive committee December 2nd. I've not heard anything from it. I didn't find any minutes. I didn't find a summary or the transcriptionist's transcription from the meeting. It was shared with all of us at staffing meeting number 3, that the contract was signed between the council and Families Helping Families at the Crossroads for PIP. And so that was the only update I had. I hope for that information to be shared with me soon and you all. I have access to the same information that you guys have, which is on our website. If you go under our 2020 meetings, you'll see where this meeting was. You can pull up the agenda, and then you can pull up these motions. And then at some point there should be a summary hyperlink there as well. And I know that's not all the information, but that's the information that I have.
Okay, so I know that the meeting was held because somebody had told me. I didn't even know the meeting was happening. And I know they did have the meeting about it. I just didn't know if these were actually approved. The only thing that I really, really have a concern with, and I want to make sure that we're careful with it, is the motion number 2, where it says recommends a virtual format in 2021 for partners in policymaking sessions. I think it's critical, and it's on the part of the DD Council, that you're not using the Partners in Policymaking name to do these sessions, because it's not truly the Partners in Policymaking. Unless you get approval from Partners in Policymaking from Minnesota, I would be super, super careful about that, because it's not the format, the same format. Even if you use the speakers and you try to do the same thing, I do not, unless something's changed because of COVID, you should not be using that official name when it's not the true Partners in Policymaking program of the 6-month, 160 something hours. So I just feel it's very important that that's on the record, stated that the name is not used. When we did it in 2016 and we traveled around the state, it was regional workshops. We didn't use the partner's name, but we gave the same type of thing. We just can't use the name if you're not doing the format that's been trademarked and all that, because that name is registered and trademarked. And I just wanted to share that and have that on the record.
I will put that in the minutes.
Thanks, Marilyn.
I
Thank you, Liz.
understand.
Yeah, thank you, Liz. That would surely be something for Adrian and Jim to keep in mind as they move forward with that. Do we have any other comments? Can we get a motion to formally dissolve this committee? Can't see if anyone has their hand up. I'm sorry. Let me see if I can change my screen format. Karonda?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Billings. I'm gonna piggyback off of Ms. Gary. If the executive committee has not made a decision yet as it relates to these mini sessions, then I don't think that it would be extremely prudent of us to dissolve this ad hoc committee just yet. I think we need to actually know where the DD Council stands as it relates to that motion.
What do you think?
Before we just say that we're ready to dissolve this ad hoc, because if we dissolve now, it would be a dissolvement prematurely, and then that motion can actually not be addressed, and we may not end up having those mini sessions. So I just want us to kind of take that into consideration, and I will go ahead and yield back to Ms. Polazola, since I see she has her hand up.
Yes, Bambi.
If there's objection to this motion, I don't think that we have to formally vote to, dissolve this committee. That's the self-determination, that's their purview to end the committee whenever they want.
Right.
So.
That's correct. And I would, that was the comments I made earlier than any other business. Maybe we carry over to self-determination community inclusion, because really we've met our objectives, as I believe. Jim, do you have any feedback? Do you think we're in a good spot going forward?
No, not really.
Can you express your concerns?
And I'm looking forward, well, I think we're all looking forward to this new year as much as we can, with so many uncertainties.
Right. But do you see any reason for any other actions this committee? I mean, we were set to, this committee was
No, because
FY20 and FY20.
The main thing is you have a competent person on board who's going to handle it, and you and I don't have to worry about it. No, I don't see any reason to have a further committee.
Adrian, you have any comments regarding that?
No, I am just writing my tasks, my to-dos.
All right. I think we have accomplished our goals, and we really have no further business that was under the purview of, we can't keep putting minutia in front of us to keep carrying on for the ad hoc committee. Mary Lee, go ahead.
So, Bambi was right in saying that SDCI created this. This was created in Self-Determination Community Inclusion Committee. The task was to make a recommendation to the council on what to do with partners due to COVID. That was the only task. And so that task met. You guys did make a recommendation. So in the way I see it, to stay on to make sure that they accepted your recommendation would not be appropriate. The second thing is, I think to dissolve this committee, the recommendation would be, you guys would recommend to SDCI, hey, we're done with our work type of thing. And then ultimately SDCI has to recommend to the council to dissolve the committee. Because ultimately the council really made this committee. It came from SDCI.
Okay, thank you for that clarification, Mary Lee. I'm sorry, I'm having some respiratory issues this morning. So do we have, based on that, do we have anyone who like to make a motion to address to the Self-Determination Community Inclusion Committee and then to the full council that this committee be dissolved?
You guys want to hang out for a while?
I guess.
I guess we keep on meeting for whatever purpose.
Well,
I'm not sure.
I really have no idea what we would meet about.
So do you need a motion to,
I'll make it.
yeah, I'll second it.
Okay, thank you. I believe that was Selena and seconded by Bambi. Do we have any objections? Do we have any abstentions? Do we have any public comment?
I just want to thank you for including me in this discussion. I appreciate being allowed to give input and speak on behalf of the other participants. I appreciate all of your time on all of this. And if there is any future discussion or planning regarding the implementation of the completion of 2020, I would love to also be able to participate in that or considered for it. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Selena. We appreciate you participating with us. So hearing no other objections or no objections, the motion's going to carry and we're going to dissolve or recommend that the committee be dissolved. So do we have any other public comment regarding our meeting today?
Go for it, Adrian.
All right. All right. Closing comments. I really do appreciate y'all participating in this ad hoc committee, and we covered a lot of important information, and it was great to get to know Adrian and Jim. Appreciate you sitting in with us. I'm sorry. Do we have a motion to adjourn?
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Thank you, Liz. Do we have a second?
Second.
I'm sorry, I didn't see who seconded.
I second.
Thank you, Nicole. Do we have any objection? Any abstention? Hearing none, we will adjourn this meeting. Thank you, everyone.